Really? Dad? Mom's right. You really are an ass. And that was the last thing I heard from my daughter. As I hung up the phone, over the next few days, she tried to send me text messages, but I just deleted them. There were even a couple voice messages, but I deleted them after hearing the first couple words. It was all the same. They were just my ex-wife's words, spoken in my daughter's voice. She made her choice 10 years ago, and is at peace with that decision. That so-called olive branch was just an insult. She could have taken the whole olive tree and shoved it up her ass. So, I'm Tom Williams. I used to be married to Kayla Williams. We were married for about 17 years, when everything fell apart. Of course, I was blamed for it. That's what happens to innocent pricks. In our wonderful divorce courts in this country, blame the man and then let the ex-wife get full custody, so she can tell the kids what a horrible man their father is. I swear the divorce laws in this country were written by a bunch of man-hating feminists who want to screw anyone with a penis. As I said, we were married for 17 years. We had 2 children, a 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought everything was going great. I loved my wife and I was sure she loved me. Our children were smart, athletic, well-behaved, and cute. Carly was a daddy's girl, and Josh was a friendly and athletic boy. I was making decent money as a mechanical engineer, and Kayla had a good job as an accountant. We both played sports to keep fit, and we were both pretty cute. Like I said, Carly was a daddy's girl to the core. She seemed to idolize me, and I was circled around her little finger. She had a good aptitude for math and science, and decided she was going to be an engineer like Daddy. She got her driver's license the day she turned 16. She, like me, loved to drive. From the age of 10, she would go to the garage, handing me wrenches, while I worked on the various toys I acquired. I am an unabashed tech enthusiast. I like old cars, mostly made by GM, that I can mess around with and collect. She instilled in me a love for them. Sometimes on the weekends, we would go to car shows together and spend all day drooling over these wonderful cars. It seemed like we were practically joined at the hip almost every weekend. I was also quite adept at household chores. Carly always enjoyed helping me when I did something around the house. I taught her the basics of plumbing, electrical, drywall, and painting. She was by my side when I was installing new appliances. She even helped me with the new concrete slab I put down next to the store. Although Carly turned to her mom for girl issues, which I was very happy about, I was the one she came to for advice and help with everything else. Homework, drama with friends, advice on things she was thinking of doing, boys, etc. We were very open and honest with each other. When she was in trouble, I was the one she turned to for help. I had a daddy's girl and Kayla had a mommy's boy. Josh was never into cars and mechanics. Like his older sister, he was a good student, but he wasn't particularly excited about science. He excelled more in English, literature, and social studies. He started talking about becoming a lawyer. Of course, Josh and I hung out too, but he seemed to be more attached to his mom than to me. For the past couple weeks, Kayla seemed a little out of sorts. It wasn't a big deal. She just seemed a little distant, and lately she's been kind of shutting down for a minute or two. A couple times I asked her if everything was okay, but she just waved me off and ignored me. Usually I liked it when she blew me off, but this wasn't the case. Again, no big deal, just a little off. It was Friday night. I had just gotten home from work. It was 6 o'clock as it usually is on a Friday night. I saw that Kayla was already home as usual. I walked in the door and yelled out that I was home as usual. Oddly enough, there were no smells of dinner cooking. Carly didn't come down and greet me either. Sure, she's a teenager now, but she usually greets me if she's home. She and Josh must still be out with friends. Oh well, I put my briefcase in my office and went upstairs to change into more comfortable clothes for the evening. When I entered the bedroom, I saw that my wife had laid out her LBD dress, sexy lingerie, stockings and garters, and 6-inch CFMs on the table. That explained the lack of odor at dinner. Apparently, we were going out for the evening instead. I wish she had warned me about that, but I didn't have any other plans anyway. Kayla was still in the bathroom, applying makeup when I walked in. "Where are we going, honey?" I asked, taking off my shirt. "We're not going anywhere," she replied. That was weird. Well, if we're not going anywhere, Why are you wearing so much makeup and laying out a sexy outfit on the bed? I said we're not going anywhere. I'm going. Really? Where are you going in that outfit without me? And where are the kids? I had a bad feeling. The kids are spending the night with friends. I don't know exactly where my date will take me, but I probably won't get home until tomorrow morning. What do you mean your date? And you're not coming back until morning? That's exactly what I said. I have a date tonight, and if everything goes according to plan, I'll spend the night with him, she said calmly. You're crazy. What the hell do you think I'm going to put up with this for a second? Screw it. If you want to go out and have some fun, you can wait until the divorce is final. Stop being stupid. There's not going to be a divorce. I'll just do it once, and then it's back to business as usual. I need this night. We've been married for 17 years, and I just need to go out one time to prove to myself that I'm still attractive to other guys. If you really love me, you'll let me have this night, and it won't even be noticeable. If you really loved me, you wouldn't even think about it. I love you, but I need this. I'm getting older, and I need to feel like I'm still attractive to other men, younger men in particular. Clarence is about 10 years younger than me. He's been flirting with me for the past 6 months, and I've decided to finally accept his proposal. It's just one night of sex to convince myself that I'm still a sexy woman, attractive to other men. It's just a confidence boost for me. I've noticed a few wrinkles and a couple gray hairs starting to show through, and I need a boost to my ego. I don't need it, and I'm not going to put up with it. Remember that part of the wedding vows about renouncing everything else? If you do that, you're breaking your vows. Don't be silly. It's just a matter of one night. After I get home, I'll never do it again. I promise. Are you stupid? Or is it you who believes I am stupid? After you broke the vows you made to me, in front of God, family, and friends, do you really think I'm going to believe your simple promise made in private? Simply put, if you go through with this, it's over between us. You're out the door, and I'm going to see a lawyer as soon as possible. Don't be an idiot. There will be no divorce. I'm going to come home and be the loving and devoted wife I've always been. If you try to divorce me, I will fight as long and hard as I can. In the end, you will lose the house, most of your assets, and I will get full custody of the children. Furthermore, I will do everything I can to ruin your dating life and place all the blame for the breakup of the family on you. I will do everything I can to make your children hate you in the end. I was shocked by her words. You claim to love me, and yet you do all this to me? Damn right. I love you, but if you try to divorce me, I will fight you. I don't want to lose you, so I'm just giving you the consequences of your actions. Look, I told you I only need one night to prove that I'm still attractive and sexy. Yeah, what about in a few more years? How about the next time you start thinking you're still getting older and wonder if you can still be attracted to a younger man? I promise that won't happen. And yes, I overheard some gossip. I admit I'm curious, but it's just going to be sex. There will be no love. You have nothing to worry about him taking me away from you. Like I said, it's just a one-time thing. To get it all out of your head, maybe I'll even learn a few things to diversify our sex life. A couple of new tricks will liven up our lovemaking. If you go through with this, I've already told you the consequences of your actions. If you call him right now and cancel, we can go through marriage counseling and try to save our marriage. Don't be silly. We'll be fine. If you really insist on counseling to cure your bruised ego, we can talk about it when I get back tomorrow. With those words, she continued to get ready for her date. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then left the room. After a while, she came downstairs, dressed in the clothes she had laid out on the table. She had a small clutch in her hands and was examining herself in the mirror by the door. I sat in my chair in the living room. A car horn honked outside. He's here. I have to go now. I'll see you in the morning. She walked over and kissed me goodbye. I turned my head and recoiled from her. She ended up kissing the air. She stood up again and looked at me with a frown. Fine. Let it be like this. Once you calm down, everything will go back to normal. With those words, she turned and headed for the door. I made one last request of her. If you walk out that door, it's over between us. You'd better think twice about throwing 17 years of marriage away. She turned to look at me. I'm not throwing anything away. Like I said, I'll be back and everything will fall into place. With those words, she opened the door and stepped out. Yes, I started crying about losing my marriage and the woman I had loved exclusively for the past 20 years. 17 years of marriage, a year of engagement, and 2 years of exclusive dating. I didn't understand how she could do this to me. She never expressed any displeasure to me. We had a normal sex life, and she never said she wanted more. I would have gladly given her more if she wanted it. We didn't fight about anything. Sure, there were some disagreements as all couples do, but we still discussed everything and came to a mutual agreement. I had already decided what I would do if she went for it. Half an hour later, I finally got up and went to work. I guess I waited that half hour for her to come to her senses and come back. Obviously, that didn't happen. I went upstairs and proceeded to put my plan into action. It wasn't a great plan, but it was the best I could do at the time. It was a fairly large house with 4 bedrooms. The master bedroom, Carly's room, Josh's room, and a large guest bedroom. The guest bedroom was actually a second master bedroom with a private bath. We used it when her or my family came over. We also used it for kid sleepovers. Now, however, it has become my temporary bedroom. It took me about 2 hours to completely move from our old bedroom to my new one. I had no illusions about what would happen in our divorce. This was a no-fault state. That means that the divorce laws in the state were written by man-hating feminists. Basically, unless the wife was convicted of some serious crime and sent to prison for at least 10 years, the husband got screwed. It didn't matter if the husband was a completely innocent victim. The wife ended up getting the house, the kids, alimony maintenance. It used to be called child support, and the husband was left with all the bills. She gets the gold mine, and he gets the mine. After settling into my new temporary living quarters, I went down to the home office and logged into our online banking. A few years ago, I had opened another account in my name. It wasn't done for any devious purpose, just that I could buy her gifts, and she would be surprised. We both had access to our finances, and several times, she would go in to check our finances and happen to see a purchase I had made for her. Needless to say, there were no surprises on her birthday or Christmas, so I opened a new account in my name, only so I could buy her gifts and not let her know what she would get in advance. Now I decided to repurpose that account. She knew about it, but she didn't have access to it. First, I transferred exactly half of our checking and savings accounts to my personal account. Then, using the money left in the joint account, I paid off and canceled all of our credit cards. I then issued several new cards in my name only. Yes, I should have paid off everything before transferring the money, but I figured I'd rather pay whatever the court orders me to pay than try to collect anything from her. I would transfer my direct deposits from work to my personal account. On Monday morning when I got to work, I would also have to call our broker and ask to split our investments on Monday. Having done what I could, I grabbed another glass of Jim Beam on the rocks and went up to my room for the night. I finished my drink getting ready for bed. It wasn't a great night's sleep. For one thing, I was used to sleeping next to my wife. Without her, the bed felt empty, and then my thoughts just didn't want to shut down. I kept going over in my mind what I could have done to prevent it. Should I have tried to get her to stay out the door? Physically restrain her? Go to this asshole's car with a baseball bat? A gun? Was it worth going to jail? It was a long night. I dozed off every now and then, but not too much. I finally decided to get up. When light started coming through the window, I was still tired, so I decided to take a shower, more to help myself fully wake up than anything else. After shaving, showering, and brushing my teeth, I put on jeans and a t-shirt and went downstairs. I ate breakfast and had a couple cups of coffee while reading the paper. It was night in the morning when Kayla came back to the house. I was sitting in my office at my computer, looking at apartments for rent. I had already researched the information on the attorneys and set up an appointment from Monday afternoon through their online scheduling. "Good morning, sweetheart. I'm home as promised," she greeted cheerfully as she entered the house. I just ignored her. Throughout the night and this morning, my anger at what she had done had been building. As I sipped my coffee this morning, I realized that I had done nothing to deserve such disrespect from her. I also realized there was nothing I could have done to prevent what she had done. It was all on her conscience. If I had somehow managed to stop her date last night, she would have just done it again another time. There are a lot of people who say, you can't stop loving someone all of a sudden. They may be right, but what you can do is turn that love into hate. The opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. With hate, emotion is still present. Marriage counselors can often save a marriage if there is hate by turning it back into love. If there is indifference, there is no chance at all. All the love I had for my wife yesterday, until I got home, has now turned into hate. Doing this was surprisingly easy. All I had to do was focus on the lack of respect she was showing me. Then I added her threats against me if I didn't agree. Added to that was her disregard for my feelings. I had a few hours to focus on all of this. Honey, where are you? I'm home just like I told you. I even cleaned myself up before I came to your house. Honey, I heard her call out to me, going around the house looking for me. There you are, she said, opening the door to my office. I'm back and now things can go back to normal. She continued walking over to my desk. She walked around the table and reached out her arms to hug and kiss me. I shoved her back. Keep your filthy, sick lips off me. God only knows what they've touched and what filthy shit has been in your mouth. Her eyes went wide with shock. I'd never spoken to her like that in all the years I'd known her. I continued before she could respond. You need to go to the clinic and get a full set of STD tests. I want to see a notarized clean report from you. Too much? Maybe. Did I not care? No. I watched her expression change from shock to anger. I hoped she'd realize what she'd done and repent. I see you're still coping with your bruised ego. I'm going to go up to our room and take a nap. I've had a long night and I want to get some rest. I hope you've calmed down by now, and we can talk later. I expect a full apology from you for your rudeness this morning. With those words, she turned and left the room. I couldn't help but smile, anticipating her imminent return, and I didn't have to be disappointed. What the hell did you do? I heard her yell as she stepped back. Where are your clothes? Where are all your toiletries? What the hell do you think you're doing? She muttered, barging back into my office. What do you mean? I asked calmly. All my things are exactly where they should be. What are you talking about? Your closet is empty. Your drawers are empty. Your corner of your dressing table is empty. What do you mean everything is lying where it should be? Like I said, my clothes hang neatly in my closet, or folded and in my dresser. My toiletries are neatly in their places in the bathroom. That's not true. I just told you that your things are not in our bedroom, she exclaimed in despair. Ah, I see your problem now. You see, you still mistakenly think your bedroom is our bedroom. I just told you that all of my stuff is where it belongs in my bedroom. You mean? Yes, I told you I wouldn't put up with it. So I moved out of your bedroom. I'm going to live in my new bedroom until I find an apartment and move out. I thought about telling her about our finances, but screw it. Let her figure it out on her own. Besides, there was no point in ruining the surprise until I'd sorted out the investments. Her eyes narrowed in annoyance. We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to recover, and then I'll put everything back in place, and we'll go back to normal. Not until I get a notarized report that you're free of all diseases. I waved it off, turning back to the computer. I stayed in my office most of the day. The kids came home early in the morning. I briefly wondered how long it would take them to realize there was a problem. I found some apartments that looked good, filled out the forms, and made an appointment to see them on Tuesday. Then I printed out our financial statements. I would need them for my lawyer on Monday. Although I was under no illusions about selling the house, I figured that determining its value might help settle the dispute. In theory, she would owe me half the value of the share. Wishful thinking, but still. I spent the rest of the day researching divorce laws in our state. I realized I was going to get screwed over, but at least I had to have an idea of how badly. It would have helped me formulate a plan of action, if not something else. Daddy, dinner's ready, said Carly, poking her head through the door. Okay, sweetie. Thank you. Kayla smiled radiantly as I entered the kitchen. It was obvious what her plan was: to kill me with kindness and show me what I would lose if I didn't accept what she did. She did the best she could. She got dressed and put on makeup. Her hair was styled in a style I liked. She spent quite a bit of time in the kitchen that day to prepare my favorite meal. When I entered the kitchen, she came over to me and held out a glass of wine. I poured you a glass of wine. She held it out to me and leaned in for a kiss. I saw the pain in her eyes as I pulled away from her. I took the glass from her, walked over to the sink, poured out the water, and put the glass on the counter. Then I got a tumbler out of the cabinet, put a couple ice cubes in it, and then poured a couple fingers of Jim Beam in it. It was out of the question that the kids sitting at the table wouldn't notice this. Walking over to the table, I sat down and started chatting with the kids. I didn't even pay attention to my wife. Dinner was clearly a stretch. I kept the kids talking as much as I could, but it was pretty obvious that we were in serious trouble. It didn't help that I didn't even put anything on my plate, let alone eat anything. These dishes were my favorites, but I just passed the bowls and plates around, without even looking at them. I just kept trying to make conversation with the kids, while sipping my drink. "Dad, aren't you going to eat anything?" asked Josh finally. "No, not hungry." That was all I answered. After the most awkward dinner in the history of mankind, I just got up, refilled my glass, and headed back to my office. I didn't even bother to help clear my desk. After about half an hour, I shut down my computer, grabbed the keys to my truck, and left the house to go to a nice quiet restaurant for dinner. Afterward, I stopped at a bar to have a couple drinks. By the time I got home, it was pretty late. I saw that the light was still on in Kayla's bedroom, so as I closed the door to my room, I made sure it was noisy enough for her to hear. I locked the door and then slid a chair under the handle. As I was getting ready for bed, I heard her trying the knob and then knocking. She tried to get me to open the door for about 5 minutes, but then gave up. The next morning I got up early. I decided that today was going to be a soccer day. There were 3 games, morning, afternoon, and evening, and I would watch them all. Yes, there were things to do this weekend, but I decided to ignore them. Screw it. I'm not going to live here for long, so Kayla can just delegate it to someone else. I had already drank almost all of my coffee and started getting ready to make an omelet for breakfast. I was just finishing mine when Carly came into the kitchen. "Hi, sweetie. Omelet?" I asked. "Sure, Dad. Thank you." She took her juice and sat down at the table, and I started to prepare the food. A few minutes later, Josh showed up. I told him I would cook it as soon as I was done with his sister's food. Carly ate her omelet while I cooked Josh's. I heard Kayla in the hallway, so I poured the last cup of coffee into my glass and turned off the kettle. She walked in, shuffling, took a cup from the cupboard and looked at the empty pot. "You couldn't even leave a cup for me?" She stared at me. "The pot is right here. You know how to cook it?" "Never mind. So you're making scrambled eggs?" "Made them. Just finished, but feel free to make yourself one," I replied, putting one on Josh's plate. I used the last of what I made for him. I even put all the ingredients away already. To hell with her. After taking care of the kids, I walked out of the kitchen. It was just before noon. I was sitting in the living room watching the morning game. Kayla walked in with a plate and a bottle of beer. She set everything on the coffee table in front of me. "I brought you lunch and beer so you won't miss any games," she said cheerfully. Without looking at her, I kicked the plate and bottle off the table and onto the floor. She stood there with her mouth open and shocked. At that moment, the commercial came on and I got up, walked to the kitchen, and got myself a beer. Yes, I can hear all of you crying about alcohol abuse, because I spilled all the beer on the floor. I wasn't going to drink any of the stuff she brought me, so it would have been a waste anyway. No, I didn't clean up after her. She brought it in unwanted so she could clean it up herself. I didn't care if she stained the carpet. I wasn't going to live here long anyway. "We need to discuss this," Kayla began. "Shut up. Game on," replied I. "For God's sake, you need to do something about your attitude. The kids have already noticed. By all means, I'm sure they'll notice when I move out anyway." "Oh, calm down. You're not moving out and there won't be a divorce," she insisted as she walked away. It started closer to noon. At least they were kind enough to wait until after the break. Carly and Josh entered the room together. They sat down on the couch facing me. "Dad, what's going on between you and Mom?" Carly started. "Well, now you might know. Your mom and I are getting a divorce. It has nothing to do with either of you. We both love you. This is just between me and your mom." But why? Asked Josh. Because your mother did something I just can't accept. She did it even after I told her how I felt about it. But she did it anyway. She's not remorseful about it one bit. You mean when she went on her date Friday night? Asked Carly. You know about this? I was surprised. Well, yeah. Mom told us you weren't thrilled about it. So you know she cheated on me. No, she didn't. She said she told you about it beforehand. So it wasn't cheating. She didn't sneak behind your back to do it. And that was the only time she did anything like that. Josh explained. Yes, Dad. Besides, it was just one night out of the 20 years you dated. And were married. She said that if you really loved her, you would have just let her have that night and moved on with your life. Carly added. Frankly, I was shocked. I was also hurt that my daddy's girl didn't even bother to understand my position. She took her mother's side and didn't even want to hear my point of view. Really? How about if she really loved me? She wouldn't even consider having sex with anyone else? Come on, Dad. It was just once and she promised she'd never do it again. Okay, then let's discuss her promises. A little over 17 years ago, she made a solemn vow to me. She made that vow in front of God, our families and friends. She vowed to leave everyone else behind. There were no exceptions to this vow. The duration of this vow was limited, till death do us part. In case you haven't noticed, none of us are dead. If she can so easily break this solemn vow made in public, how can I trust the promises she makes to me in private? Yes, but you also vowed to be there for her in good times and bad. Josh thought about becoming a lawyer. Hopefully he'd do much better at it. That's right. The problem is that your mother, in breaking her vow, broke the contract and released me from my vows. Well, we just don't understand why you would want to break up your family over one single night. Asked Carly. Why are you saying I'm destroying the family? Why am I being blamed for what she did? Mom's not going to leave. She wants to put it all behind her and move on. You're the one leaving and making a big deal out of it. If you leave, you'll ruin the family, insisted Carly. After that, the situation did not improve. I tried to explain my position, but they did not listen. They weren't interested in my opinion. Kayla had been filling their heads with her nonsense all last day. All they knew was that Mom had done something she really needed to do, and Dad didn't love her, and the kids enough to accommodate her needs. She convinced them that Daddy's little male ego caused him to abandon them all and tear the family apart. It was Daddy's fault for failing to give Mommy the one small tiny thing she really needed to be happy. Instead, Dad decided to make everyone suffer because of his stubbornness. Really, it was just one night out of their 20 years together. Seriously, what is one night out of 7,305 nights? 20 years at 365 days a year, plus one extra day and 5 leap years? They eventually left. When it became clear that I wasn't going to accept their position, I managed to watch the rest of the game in peace. As the game was winding down, I could smell the aromas of dinner being prepared. Apparently, it was another one of my favorite meals. I just sat and watched the postgame show in anticipation of the night's game. The time was getting late. The game was supposed to start in 20 minutes. Josh came in and said dinner was ready. I just got up, grabbed my truck keys, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Dinner is already set on the table. Asked Josh. I'm going to the sports bar to watch the game. I'll get something to eat there, I replied. But Mom fixed. I'll be back after the game. I'll probably be here for a while. After it's over, though. I sat there after the game. They had a really good burger with seasoned fries. The beer was pretty good too. I only had 1 beer a quarter, so it was enough for me to drive. Besides, it was only 5 minutes from home. When I got home, everyone had already gone to bed, so I just went to my bedroom, locked and bolted the door, and went to bed. The plate and bottle on the coffee table were put away by the time I got home. That made me smile. Monday morning I got up early and was out of the house before everyone was even up. The first thing I did when I got to the office was call my broker. I explained that I was going through a divorce and wanted him to split all of our investments in half. He created a new account in my name only and transferred half of our investments into it. Next up, human resources. I removed Kayla's name from the retirement account and asked them to put Carly and Josh as my heirs. I also gave them my new bank account information, so they would redirect my paycheck there. Lastly, I informed my boss that I was going through a divorce, so I would need time off to meet with my attorney, court dates, meetings, etc. He was fine with it. My lawyer told me what I already knew. There was a small chance of getting custody, but it all depended on where the children wanted to live. They were old enough for the court to seriously consider their wishes. Based on my conversation with him yesterday, I wasn't going to count on that. I asked him to get started on the paperwork and asked him to get her to work on Monday. I didn't even bother driving home right after work. Monday night football was on, so I just stopped by the sports bar. 3 tacos for $1. I ate 3 during the first half and 3 more during the second half. I ignored text messages and phone calls from Kayla. I answered Carly and let her know where I was. Her reaction to this was not very pleasant. All 3 of them gave me an unkind look when I walked in on them after the game. I just walked into my office and closed the door. By the time I was done and went up to my room, everyone had gone to bed. Tuesday morning I got up early and was out of the house before everyone else was up. Work was fine, and I took the day off to look at apartments. I settled on a nice 2-bedroom apartment and put down a deposit. I would be able to move in on Saturday. A trip to the thrift store allowed me to buy a couch, table, and chairs. They were to be delivered Saturday afternoon. I decided that I liked the bed I had been using and was going to pick it up, as well as everything in my home office. By the time I got home, they were already eating dinner. I grinned, noticing that they hadn't even put out a plate for me. That was fine with me. I wasn't going to eat anyway. I just walked over to the refrigerator and pulled out everything I needed to make a huge sandwich. After making the sandwich, I grabbed a bag of chips and a beer, and then headed to my office. "Geez, Dad, why are you being such an asshole?" exclaimed Carly entering my office. "Well, Carly, simply put, your mother cheated on me. She had absolutely no respect for me, and then she threw it in my face. I'm not going to put up with that. I made it very clear what would happen if she went along with it. She went for it, even knowing what would happen. You can't seriously be ruining your family over this. Come on. It was no big deal. It was just sex. Carly, you're going to get married someday. Think how you would feel if your husband told you one night that he had a date with a younger, prettier woman and was going to spend the night with her. Well, I'm sure I wouldn't like it much. But if he promised to come back to me and it was only once, I'd hope I loved him enough to get over it. Besides, if he told me about it first, it wouldn't seem like cheating. Sure. Do me one favor. When you get married, look straight into your fiancé's eyes. When you say your vows, when you look into his loving eyes, and get to the phrase about leaving everyone else behind, imagine how the love in those eyes will turn to utter devastation. When you tell him you're off having fun with another man." With those words, I turned my back on her and went back to work. Wednesday evening was an ambush. When I got home from work, both parents were already there. People often make fun of their in-laws, but I actually got along very well with her parents. They accepted me into their family as the son they never had. Charles, her father, was as much of a tech fanatic as I was. His only problem was that he liked Fords. Okay, he had extremely poor taste in cars, but I could overlook that. He had a '69 Mustang Fastback that was in pristine condition. Yeah, I got along very well with my parents. We were not one of those dysfunctional families where kids grew up hating their parents. They were always very loving and supportive of me. Of course, there were disagreements, and they never hesitated to tell me when they thought I was wrong about something. Sometimes we just had to agree to disagree. So I entered the house and saw that the ambush had already been prepared. I was a little puzzled. I understood why her parents would be there. Obviously, they would be on her side. After all, she is their daughter. But what confused me was that my own parents were there. It seemed counterproductive for her. My parents would agree with me and be on my side. If she was trying to get me to accept her infidelity, why would she invite someone who wouldn't be on her side and argue that I was right to divorce her infidelity? You've probably guessed by now that it took me a few more minutes to realize. "Tom," Charles began, "I want you to know that May, Kayla's mother, and I are very disappointed in what Kayla did. That said, we think you are overreacting to it. Yes, she went and had sex with another man, and it was extremely disrespectful to you. especially the way she did it. But it was just one mistake. You two have been together for a total of 20 years. You have 2 wonderful children. Think about all of that. Surely you can get over this little incident. You don't have to destroy your family over one mistake. A little mistake? Really? It wasn't a small mistake. It wasn't an accidental stumble. It was a planned event. They probably planned it at least a week in advance. Then she ambushes me an hour before she leaves, giving me no chance to resist. It was an elaborate plan to trick me. Son, Mom decided to intervene. She didn't cheat on you. She told you that first. Hey, what? First of all, you're right that she told me. Told me. She never asked. She just said she was doing it, and I had no say in it. Even when I raised my serious objections, she didn't care. Speaking of what I said, I told her it would happen if she went for it. Tom, Father tried. I understand your pain and anger, but think of your family. We love you, son. We'll be here to help you heal. But think about what you'll do to your family. Kayla still loves you and insists she won't do it again. We all think that with counseling and some effort, you can overcome this. Tearing your family apart is not the answer. We raised you to be a good man. You need to man up and keep your family together. Don't do something stupid. That will end up hurting your relationship with your family. Think of your mother and me. These are our grandchildren, and we will do whatever is necessary to keep a relationship with them. I just stood there, completely stunned. My parents were really on her side. They were really telling me that I had to accept her cheating. I just couldn't take it anymore. I turned and walked out of the room and headed for my bedroom. Kayla tried to follow me, but I closed the door in her face. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I didn't say a word as I walked through the living room and out the front door. They were still sitting there, trying to talk to me as I walked by. I didn't even pay any attention to them. I just walked out the door, got in my truck, and drove to the sports bar to get some dinner and a few beers. Luckily, the house was quiet and dark. When I got back about 4 hours later, Thursday and Friday went the same way. I completely ignored Kayla, and my kids were still mad at me. I was surprised that Kayla still hadn't noticed that the credit cards were no longer working. I'm sure when she goes shopping on Saturday, she'll realize it. It was Friday night. I had been home for about an hour. I was sitting in my office, going through my things, and deciding exactly what I would take tomorrow and what I would take later. Kayla opened the door and walked in. She was wearing a see-through nightgown, stockings, garter belt, and heeled shoes. I have to say she looked amazing. The kids are sleeping somewhere else tonight. It's time for you to forget this nonsense and come to bed with me. I want you to make love to me all night. I really need you to take me back. I stared at her for a minute. No, thank you. Besides, I haven't yet seen the report from the clinic, confirming that you don't have any medical conditions. Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed. Your tantrums aren't accomplishing anything. Now, come on. I'm horny and I need sex. Not the slightest interest. Listen, if you don't, I'll have to call Clarence again. So what if it's a one-time thing? Damn it. It was a one-time thing. But if you're going to keep rejecting me, you're the one pushing me away to someone else. Have fun with it. Let me know if you bring him here so I can leave. The smoke coming out of her ears and nose as she ran out of the room didn't dissipate until a few minutes later. About half an hour later, I heard the front door slam. She practically burned her tires as she raced down the street. Taking advantage of the fact that the house was empty, I gathered a few things. I disassembled the bed and loaded it into the truck, along with most of my clothes. Tonight, I'll be sleeping on the couch in my office. After loading everything I wanted to take with me into the truck, I drank a Jim Beam on the rocks and relaxed. The couch wasn't the most comfortable one I'd ever slept on, but that was okay. Early the next morning, I was at the leasing office to get the key to the apartment. It took me a little while, but I managed to get everything out of the truck and into the apartment. Fortunately, a couple of friendly neighbors helped me. When I got back, no one was home yet, so the neighbor's teenage son helped me load the desk and office furniture. The computer, printer, and accessories went into the cabin. I looked back at the living room and thought, screw it, I'll take the chair too. I guess either no one came home until tonight, or no one bothered to look in my office or spare bedroom. I'm surprised they didn't notice the chair was missing. It was early evening when my phone rang. Seeing that it was my daughter, I answered it. Daddy? Where are you? I'm home, honey. No, it isn't. Your office is cleaned out. The bed and dresser in the spare bedroom are gone. And your chair isn't in the living room. Besides, I looked everywhere and you're not here. Besides, your truck is gone. You're right. I'm not there. I'm at home. I don't live there anymore. I've moved into an apartment for now. Maybe after the divorce, I'll buy another house. But this one will do for now. Geez, Dad. I can't believe you're acting so stupid. I thought you loved us. I love you, sweetheart. Always have and always will. Just not so much that you won't leave us. I'm not leaving you. You'll still be able to see me as much as you want. I will still take care of you and your brother. You abandoned us. You abandoned us and you're destroying the family. Your mother is the one who destroyed the family. I told her this is what would happen if she went on that date. But she did it anyway. But she thought you loved her enough to get over it. And I thought she loved me enough not to do it. Okay, whatever. Then she hung up. Yes, the divorce was a nightmare. She fought it to the end, counseling. She wanted me to pay. I refused. I argued that if she needed it, she should pay for it. It was one of the few arguments I won. What a waste of time. The counselor didn't like me very much. I think it had to do with the fact that I told him I was ordered to attend, but the judge didn't say anything about me actually having to participate. I endured all 12 sessions before the counselor finally gave up. She fought over literally everything. That worthless, funny poster in the garage that she absolutely despised. Suddenly, she just couldn't live without it. The Bud Light I accidentally left in the office. She hated it, but it had been on my desk since college. It was the centerpiece around which she was going to redesign the office. Yeah, that was bullshit. She was only doing it to make my divorce as difficult as possible. All this time, she made sure I didn't see the kids as much as possible. Eventually, the judge granted the divorce. I had to keep paying half the mortgage. She, of course, kept the house. Child support was $2,000 a month, but I got visitation every Wednesday night and every weekend. What really pissed me off was the $1,000 a month for 5 years of spousal maintenance. It was canceled if she remarried during that time. I wasn't going to hold my breath. I learned that she had moved clearance in with her before the divorce was even finalized. So yeah, half of my paycheck went to her. I cashed out some of my investments and bought a small house that was in dire need of renovation. At least I got it cheap, even on a 1/4 acre lot. Fortunately, I was able to get all my tools out of the garage a week after moving in. I refused to even discuss them. I had most of them before we even met. When she pushed, I talked about all of her jewelry, expensive clothes, and shoes. The house had electricity, gas, and running water. There was a roof and the walls were standing. That was enough for me. I moved into the house and started working on it in the evenings and weekends. Visitation. Yes, I was supposed to have visitation. I did visit a few times. It was a goddamn disaster. Kayla was doing everything she could to prevent it. The kids were busy. They went away for the weekend with friends. Funny how it was always my weekend and not hers. Oh, Kayla has dance practice on Wednesday. Josh has an important test on Thursday and needs to study for it. The few times I was able to visit the kids on Wednesday night, they treated me with hostility. They still blame me for everything, even when I explained my point of view to them. When the opposition literally holds them captive the entire time. And I only occasionally have an hour or two, it's a losing battle. After the third time, they bluntly told me they didn't want to see me anymore. Yes, I could force them, but what would be the point? Forcing them to see me would only cause more resentment. I sent them gifts, cards, and letters for birthdays and Christmas. They all came back unopened. I continued to send them monthly checks. I saw them being cashed, but I never heard a word. Graduation? I guess they graduated, but I didn't hear anything about it. I sent a registered letter, letting them know about the college funds I'd organized for them. In response, I heard, no thanks. Kayla basically set my kids on me just like she promised. I focused on work, the house, and only that. I didn't go anywhere or do anything. It's amazing how much money can be saved doing things this way. As if all of this wasn't bad enough. Hi, Mom, said I when she picked up the phone. Tom, how are you? She answered cheerfully. Things are going well as you'd expect. Anyway, I haven't heard anything about Thanksgiving. Are you going to have it again this year? There was silence on the other end. Mom? Are you still here? I asked. Huh. Well, that's a little awkward. Huh. Yeah, we're going to. But Kayla, her parents and kids are coming to the party. She's also bringing the new man in her life. We just felt that your presence here would be too awkward for everyone. After all, the kids are still mad at you for leaving them. And your presence with Kayla and her new man would only stress everyone out. Seriously, Mom? You're ditching your own son for Thanksgiving and inviting my ex-wife and her boyfriend instead? We want to maintain a close relationship with our grandchildren. Besides, this is your fault. You should have been working to keep the family together, not tearing it apart. How about you come visit us on Christmas Eve? Your father and I will spend Christmas Day at Kayla's house, but we can celebrate with you the day before. Whatever, I muttered, ending the conversation. I spent Christmas Eve at home watching Die Hard and ignored the numerous calls and text messages from my mom wondering where I was. I wasn't in a holiday mood. I was just looking at the packages I sent to my kids a week ago. Yesterday, they were returned to my doorstep. 5 years later, I received a wedding announcement. Kayla had married Clarence the weekend after I paid my last installment of maintenance. Bitch. Josh had turned 18 a year early, so I was done with child support. I was now completely free of my ex-family and obligations to them. I celebrated by getting drunk. Yeah, I'm not really proud of it, but to hell with it. I put my all out and gave them all the love I was capable of. But they rejected me and treated me like crap. Screw them. Now that all my obligations to that bitch and her 2 ungrateful offspring had been fulfilled, I decided to just put them out of my mind as much as possible. They obviously didn't want any relationship with me, so I would just forget about them as soon as possible and move on with my life. Well, except for one thing that always bothered me. I had to keep paying half the mortgage on the house. Of course it ended when Josh graduated, but my name was still on the deed. I think Kayla was under the mistaken impression that she owned the house. The divorce said she could only live there until the kids graduated from high school. Now all bets were off. I was entitled to half of the property, and it was a pretty big property. I contacted my attorney. To start with, when we got divorced, the house was appraised at about $300,000, and the equity was about $200,000. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we have been paying our mortgage faithfully, and property values in our area have increased significantly. After doing a little research online, I calculated that the appraised value was now about $500,000, and the equity was $450,000. Yes, we only had $50,000 left on the promissory note. Why did I do it? Well, for the money, of course. Who could use an extra $250,000? Besides, it would piss Kayla off. She adored this house, and having to give me a penny for anything made her furious, and I was eager for any payback for what she'd done. It would also reimburse me for all the house maintenance and mortgage payments I had to make for her. The call came about a week later. Tom, what the hell is going on? Well, Kayla, not much going on around here. Just working and fixing up the house I bought. What's going on with you? I have to admit, I'm surprised you called to see how I'm doing. After all, this is the first time you've spoken to me since the divorce. You asshole. I'm not calling to find out how you're doing. I'm calling to find out why the realtor came to my house to look at it and get my signature on the sales contract. Oh, that. Well, that should be clear. Since both our names are on the title, she'll obviously need your signature for the sale. What sale? I love this house and I'm not going to sell it. Then when can I expect a check from you for my half of the capital? Nice try. I got the house in the divorce? No. You only used the house until Josh graduated from high school. That happened last month. Now we can either sell it and split the proceeds, or you can buy out my half. If you think I'm going to give you $100,000 for a house I owned by right, you're out of your mind. Well, that proves I'm not crazy. I'm not asking for $100,000. You could have done that 5 years ago. Now, since the equity in the house is about $450,000, my half is $225,000. If you factor in all the expensive furniture you just had to have, let's round that amount up to $250,000. You're crazy. I'm not giving you a dime, she shouted, hanging up the phone. Yes, I laughed when she hung up on me. Yes, my lawyer got his cut, but it was worth it to see her face a couple months later, when the judge ruled in my favor. I even managed to convince the judge to make her pay her legal fees. and my lawyer for bringing her to court over something that should have been settled out of court. The house appraised for more than I had estimated. Including the value of the furniture, I got $275,000. They ended up buying me out rather than selling me. I found out later that they mostly used Clarence's money. It ended up getting him in trouble, but more on that later. I managed to get the house in order. I even built a decent-sized store behind the house. I picked up an old 1972 Chevy pickup truck that was in bad shape. I was only interested in the chassis. The rest would have been replaced anyway. Over the last year, I have taken it apart, cleaned it up, and completely repainted it. When the paint and bodywork was done, it was time to tackle the running gear. The rear differential was still good, but I rebuilt it anyway. It had to be able to handle the power I was going to put through it. The transmission was a Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual. It was fast stuff. I decided to have some fun with the engine. It was just going to be a toy, not for everyday driving. 427 big block. I managed to find it online at a parts depot. I bought it and had it shipped. Once it arrived, I put it on the stand and started taking it apart. I had to send it to a machine shop to bore the cylinders, connecting rod and cam. New forged crankshaft. 10/1 pistons. Nice heavy cam. Heads ported and polished, then double spring valves put in, and then a supercharger to bring it all up to speed. Yeah, I'd probably run more gas stations than tire shops, and I'd run very few gas stations. I chromed the valve covers, polished the aluminum on the supercharger, and used steel braided hoses. It almost required sunglasses to open the hood. The first time I hit the road, I almost wrecked it. I was driving down the highway and decided to punch it. Big mistake. The rear tires blew out instantly. I barely managed to keep the car in a straight line before I let off the gas. Remember, take it slow on the gas pedal. After that, I started driving more carefully. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a car show open to the public. Thinking it would be fun, I filled out the form and paid the entry fee. When the day came, I loaded up the '72 Chevy and drove to the park. I registered and got my spot. As I was setting up my car, I noticed a very nice 1968 GTO parked next to me. I set up my shade structure in the area behind the truck. A couple chairs and a refrigerator completed my setup. And then I noticed attractive red-headed girls setting up chairs behind the goat. Yes, I said redheads plural. There were two of them. One looked about my age, and the other was about 10 years old. Probably still a schoolgirl. There were two very important things I didn't notice. I didn't see a boy with them, and I didn't see anything on the third finger of the older woman's left hand. Of course, I looked closer. "Good morning. I like your car," said I cheerfully. They both looked up from their studies. "Hi. Thanks. I like your truck, too," said the older one. "Thank you. Have you been to many of these events?" "This is my first one. I mean, I've been to car shows before, but only as a spectator. This is the first one I'm participating in. My name is Tom, by the way. This is the third time my daughter and I have participated. My ex has hosted it several times before. I'm Marie, and this is my daughter Jenny. In that case, when you're done, why don't you two join me in the shade? I have a cooler full of drinks, and I could use any information about these shows I can get." We ended up spending most of the day here. Once in a while, we would get up and talk to someone about our cars, but it was a very enjoyable day. No, I didn't win any awards, but I still had fun. I found out that she divorced her husband 3 years ago because she caught him cheating. He was cheating with his boss's wife. She made a deal with him. She would give him all the videos if he would rewrite the GTO to her. She told me it would hurt him, and she wanted him to keep his job so he could continue to pay her alimony and maintenance. It was a double win for her. Besides, his boss was an asshole, and she didn't care at all about his wife tooting his horn. Jenny was also friendly and joined in the conversation. She told me that she was very angry at her father for his cheating. She has nothing to do with him anymore. We were having such a good time that I didn't want it to end. As the show was winding down, I suggested they have dinner at Red Lobster a couple blocks away. They agreed, and we drove there. I didn't really want to be sad, but they asked and told me their story. I listed the highlights. I told them that my kids had sided with my wife and no longer had anything to do with me. "You mean she cheated, and your children blame you for divorcing her?" Jenny was stunned. "Yes." I tried to explain to them, but by then she'd already sicked them on me. Marie put her hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry for you, Tom. You're such a good guy, and you don't deserve anything like this." She said it sincerely. I decided to change the subject to something more pleasant. We ended up talking and laughing for another hour. We seemed to have a real connection. We exchanged numbers, and Maria agreed to meet me again. As they were leaving, I saw Jenny smile broadly at me, wink, and give me 2 thumbs up. I realized that she didn't mind me meeting her mom again, either. So Marie and I got back together. It was the following weekend. I called and asked. She enthusiastically agreed. Dinner and dancing. I kissed her on the cheek as I walked her to the door. As I turned to leave, I saw the red-haired teenage girl in the window smiling and giving me 2 thumbs up. After 2 more dates, I invited them both over to my house and cooked them dinner. After my divorce, I learned how to cook pretty well. Food Network, a few YouTube videos, a lot of trial and error. My lasagna turns out really good, so I settled on that. They seemed to like it. They really liked my house, but I overheard Marie telling her daughter that it definitely needed a feminine touch. I wouldn't have argued if I had been asked. The following weekend, I was invited to visit them. Marie cooked in such a way that my feeble efforts were shamed. Even Kayla wasn't as good as Marie. I couldn't help myself. I know it's rude as hell, but I just couldn't stop eating. I finally had to apologize to them for making a pig out of myself. They just laughed and asked why I was apologizing. It was the biggest compliment you can give a woman who loves to cook. She told me that Jenny was almost as good as she was. It happened 2 weekends later. I took Marie out to dinner and then to a dance club. We had been dancing for a while when a slow song came on. We pressed against each other, swaying to the beat of the music. We'd already ended up kissing pretty hot a few weeks ago. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Take me home." Honestly, I was surprised. I thought we were having a great time and now she wanted to go home. I pulled back to look at her. She must have seen the look on my face and started giggling. "Ah, you silly man. I meant take me to your house." "Oh, luckily I had my regular truck and not a 72. I'm not sure I could have kept the tires on the road if I had driven home in the 72. Yeah, I went for it. I made her breakfast before driving her home. I got another double thumbs up from the red-headed teenager in the window. A few months later, I asked and she answered. It was a simple ceremony in front of a judge. They moved into my house right after the wedding. Jenny even started calling me daddy. It was a wonderful life. Yes, there were disagreements. Yeah, Jenny and I had our differences too. She was a teenager and I was the authority figure. Sometimes I had to say no. Still, she respected me and her mom loved me as much as I loved her. An unexpected call came about a year later. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I said, picking up the phone. "Hi, Daddy." An excited female voice sounded on the other end of the line. "Carly?" "Yes, Daddy. It's me and I have great news." "Really? It's really good to hear from you." I was really glad to hear from her. Maybe she was reaching out to repair the relationship. "I'm getting married." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you. Anyway, I want you at my wedding." "Oh, honey? Of course. It's one of the greatest honors for a father to walk his daughter down the aisle. I've also organized a wedding fund for you." "Oh, no. Clarence is paying for the wedding, and he'll be walking me down the aisle. Besides, since it will be very awkward for you and Mom to sit together, you won't be sitting in the front pew. But I really want you to be there." "Clarence, you mean that scumbag your whore mother cheated on me with? Did she really marry that piece of shit?" "Look, Dad, I'm trying to rebuild a relationship, and I wanted you to be at my wedding. Besides, after you left, she and Clarence started seeing each other more often, fell in love, and got married. It's really your fault. If you hadn't left us, she and Clarence would never have continued dating." "Good. I can see that you are still under the impression that your mother did nothing wrong. Therefore, I will not be able to attend the ceremony for 2 reasons. First of all, I simply cannot support a marriage that I am sure will fail. You will most likely cheat on your husband, just as your mother cheated on me. If he is in any way someone I approve of, he will kick your slutty ass to the curb as soon as he finds out. Secondly, you just stole my father's last great honor from me and gave it to a filthy witch who knowingly seduced a married woman. That once again shows what a shallow, self-centered bitch you've become. Fine. If you're going to be like that, don't expect to ever see your grandchildren. If you raise them the way you are now, I still want nothing to do with them." "Really, Dad? Mom's right. You really are an ass." Click. And that was the last thing I heard from my daughter as I hung up the phone. Well, so much for any chance of a relationship with my ex-daughter. I'm pretty sure we'll never have a relationship with Josh either. Yeah, it was painful. They still blamed me for what their mother had done. I put my phone away and headed to the store. Instead of wallowing in sadness, I'd get to work on the 1963 Chevy pickup I'd pulled out of the field a couple months ago. It didn't have to be as radical as my 72. I wanted it to be more drivable. I rebuilt a 350 engine that was only slightly more powerful than the standard engine. I didn't even notice Jenny slip out from around the corner and grab my phone. I didn't even know she was home. Carly. I was so angry at my father. I tried to get through to him, and he had the nerve to talk to me like that. It's his fault our family is falling apart. I tried to be nice and invite him to my wedding, and he just threw everything back in my face. I was hoping he would finally take responsibility for what he did to our family. I lowered my eyes and saw my phone ringing. I didn't recognize the number, but there had been a lot of calls like that during the wedding planning. Hello? Hi. Is that Carly Williams? Yes. What can I do for you? Yes, you can. You can stop calling my dad and being a cast-iron bitch to him. He's the best man I've ever known, and he doesn't deserve to have a stupid, spoiled horror like you calling him and reminding him of the pathetic remnants of humanity that you are. I swear you and your family are a waste of air to breathe. Who the hell are you? My name is Jenny Williams. I'm your sister. My mom married your ex-dad and he adopted me. I love him with all my heart, and it would never occur to me to show him any disrespect or dishonor. You are an insult to daughters everywhere. I know all about what happened. Your mother went on a date totally disrespecting her husband and slept with another guy. The saddest thing about all of this is that you don't seem to mind. Let me tell you that my biological father cheated on my mom. She didn't hesitate to kick him to the curb. You can rest assured that if my mom had ever cheated on my dad, I would have helped my dad take her ass out with the rest of the trash. Yes, even though he's not my biological father, he is the most decent, caring, compassionate man I've ever met. I'm thinking of sending your whore mother a card thanking her for being such a big fool to let him go. If it wasn't for her extreme stupidity, I wouldn't have his father right now. Oh, and you can also tell your grandparents that they have another granddaughter. But I have not the slightest desire to have any relationship with someone so despicable as to reject my own son for a cheating whore and her traitorous offspring. There is one more thing you can do for me. When you say your mock vows, look into your husband's eyes and think about when he decides to cheat on you. When he does cheat on you, call me and tell me about it so I can laugh at you. Have a shitty life, sis. She hung up. I just stared at my phone in shock. First of all, I was surprised to learn that my father had gotten married. You'd think he would have at least sent his kids an invitation. Then I found out that I now had a younger sister as well. A strange thought occurred to me. I couldn't escape the thought that she looked a lot like me before Mom told Josh and I that Dad was leaving and was going to tear the family apart over one insignificant little thing. At first, I thought that Dad must have had a very good reason for doing this and figured I could probably live with him instead of Mom. But then Mom explained that she was feeling fine and that she just needed this little thing to restore her strength. After all, it was just one short period of time compared to how long they had been together. Besides, Mom was willing to stay together and work things out. Dad was the one who was a pig-headed man and wouldn't even try. Dad was the one who was leaving. He was the one who had separated them. I couldn't believe how rude she was being to me. She wouldn't even give me a chance to tell her that Dad was the one who abandoned us and that Mom was trying to move on. It was like she didn't care that it was just a one-time event that shouldn't have gone unnoticed, considering how long they had been together. And after that, she has the nerve to call me all these vile names. She doesn't even know me. What was Daddy so upset about? Of course, Clarence was going to walk me down the aisle. After all, he'd been there for me for the past few years. I hadn't even talked to Dad since Josh, and I told him how angry we were about him leaving. On top of that, Clarence was paying almost $20,000 for my wedding. I couldn't even imagine how much the pennies my dad was able to set aside for my wedding would be enough. Half an hour later, when my mom and both grandmothers came in, I was still upset about those phone calls. They were out shopping. Mom noticed my mood right away. Honey, what's wrong? I told my dad about the wedding and asked him to come. After all, I'm his only daughter and I thought he would want to be at my wedding. I was hoping that maybe it would be something we could build on and maybe start a relationship again. Oh, that's wonderful, exclaimed Grandma Williams. Is he coming? We haven't heard from him since he called about Thanksgiving a few years ago. I sighed. No. He got mad when I told him that Clarence was going to walk me down the aisle, and that I thought it would be too awkward for him to sit in the front pew with Mom and Clarence. That's too bad. I thought he'd gotten rid of his piggishness by now. Well, if that's not bad enough, I found out 5 minutes later that I have a half-sister. What? Sounds in three-part harmony. Yes. The girl who said her name was Ginny Williams called me a few minutes after Dad hung up. Apparently, Dad married her mom and adopted her. She wasn't too nice on the phone. In fact, the nicest thing she said was that she wanted to thank my mom for being stupid, or she wouldn't have such a great dad. I recounted both phone conversations to them. They were shocked at the vehemence with which Dad and Ginny had spoken on the phone. Tom got married, and we weren't invited to the wedding. He didn't even tell us about it. I have another granddaughter, whispered Grandma Williams to herself. My wedding day had finally arrived. I thought briefly about what my father had said, and for a moment I was sad that he wouldn't be here on my special day. That was fine. I'd approached him, and he'd rejected me. I brushed it off. After all, it was a happy day. I was marrying the man I truly loved, the man I would spend the rest of my life with. Clarence glowed with happiness as he took my hand, and we started walking down the aisle to the music of the wedding march. I was beyond happy looking at all of my friends and family. Both of my grandparents were there. Josh was one of Bobby's groomsmen. Everyone was there to celebrate my special day. Tears of joy came to my eyes. I looked ahead and saw my Bobby smiling at me as he stood in front of the priest. As we passed my mom, I saw her looking at me with pride. Tears of joy were running down her cheeks too. Clarence lifted my veil, kissed my cheek, and said, "Congratulations, baby girl." He then handed me into the arms of my future husband. I had a strange feeling in my mind when the priest asked, "Who gives this bride away?" And Clarence replied, "Her mother and I." Something didn't sound right, but at that moment I couldn't figure out why. It soon passed as the priest began the ceremony. I looked into the eyes of the love of my life. I repeated my vows, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. Forza. Coup. Forza. I couldn't say it. I looked straight into Bobby's eyes and I just couldn't say it. I suddenly remembered what the bitch had said on the phone. I was looking into my soulmate's eyes, and suddenly I saw him with another woman. The picture suddenly changed. Now I was looking into the dull eyes of a broken man, telling him that I had sex with another man. These pictures flashed through my mind. The words came out without thought. I understand now. If I had felt like we were under the scrutiny of the public before, it was nothing compared to what it was now. Bobby looked at me with concern. Suddenly it was as if a weight had been lifted off me. The biggest smile of my life appeared on my face. "I finally get it," I said to Bobby. "Oh, that's really great, Carly, but what did you suddenly realize?" "Absolutely everything," replied I. Then I got serious. "Bobby, do you really love me?" "Of course I love you. How can you even ask that?" "I have to ask this because I can't marry you today." I swear I felt a rush of air rush past me, and the entire audience gasped in shock. "We'll still get married, but not today. This is wrong and I have to make it right. I'm only getting married once, and it will be for life, so I have to make it right." "Baby, what's wrong?" "Bobby, I love you with everything I have. I'm going to marry you. I'll explain everything to you and you'll understand. But we need to go and start making things right. We'll reschedule everything for another day and play our wedding. You're not going to leave me at the altar, are you?" "No way. In fact, you should come with me." With those words, I turned to the guests. "I'm sorry, but I just can't go through with this today. We are not canceling our wedding. We are just postponing it. We will let you all know when we set a new date. We understand if you decide not to come. But just think of the story you will be telling about today for years to come. Won't you want to come next time and see what happens next? In any case, to make up for your disappointment in any way, the reception hall must be ready. Everything is already paid for with non-refundable deposits, so why not take advantage of that? The bar is open, so eat, drink, dance, and be merry. Don't worry, Clarence will pay the bill." With those words, I took Bobby's hand and started to make my way back down the aisle. Suddenly, my mom was blocking my exit, and Clarence was standing next to her. He didn't look pleased that I had just flushed over $20,000 down the toilet. I also noticed that all the guests were now focused on this new confrontation. Those who had gotten up to head to the reception stopped at the venue to watch the next show. Clarence started yelling nonsense about the money he'd spent and how I was going to pay him back every dime for this stunt I just pulled. Then it was Mom's turn. "Carly, what are you doing? Where are you going?" she asked. "I'm correcting a mistake I made a few years ago." "What mistake?" "Biggest mistake of my life. The mistake I made when I listened to all that crap you were saying instead of helping Daddy kick your slutty ass to the curb. The mistake I made when I blamed Daddy for the breakup of the family while it was your own fault for cheating on him. Carly, I'm your mother. I'm not a whore, and you will speak to me with respect." "Really, Mom? You're not a whore?" "Once a cheater, always a cheater." "Carly, how dare you?" "How dare I? I'm even ashamed that I even equaled you." It wasn't until I looked into Bobby's eyes while saying my vows that I woke up and realized what a horrible person you really are. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Looking into his eyes, I suddenly realized how awful it would be if he ever cheated on me. I realized how much I would hurt the man I loved if I ever cheated on him. I guess Dad was a good role model for me after all, but you sure weren't. What do you mean?" "Ask Mom." Fear flashed in her eyes. "Really, Mom? Do you really think I don't know about your Wednesday workouts with Jim Davis, your personal trainer? That they're always at his apartment instead of the gym? It's funny that you only go to the gym to see Jim. How about the fact that Carlos, your pool guy, takes an extra hour every 2 weeks because he screws your brains out on the Shades Lounge after he cleans the pool? How about your gang banging the landscaping crew every time after they finish their yard work? I've got some good video footage of me coming home early a couple times in case you try to deny it. And let's not forget how you always tip Mario, your barber, by giving a blowjob in the back room after every haircut. At least, Clarence is your boss at work, and he doesn't have to worry about you cheating on him with your boss. Am I forgetting someone? Oh yeah, I almost forgot Alan Morris, your neighbor. For the last 3 years, he's been coming over whenever his wife has a girls' night out. Her gaze flicked to Clarence as I finished laying out her dirty laundry. Perhaps she hoped he'd miraculously not heard, even though I'd said it loud enough to carry across the church, and he was standing less than 2 feet away from me. There was a look of utter shock on Clarence's face. Looking at Clarence, an evil thought occurred to me. "Oh, and Clarence? Before God and all these witnesses, I swear with the same commitment that my mother did when she made her wedding vows, that I will pay you back the money you spent on this wedding. We all know how she keeps her vows, so you can fully expect me to honor this vow just as she honors hers." Yeah, he shouldn't hold his breath waiting for even a dime. Seeing that Mom was distracted, I pulled Bobby down the aisle. I made a quick stop to talk to the videographer. Yes, he caught the whole thing on camera. He smiled broadly as he handed me a copy of the videotape. He was set up to make a duplicate in case something happened to the original. I quickly signed my signature on the authorization form to post the video on YouTube. I hoped it would go viral and increase my mom's shame. Bobby and I jumped out into the parking lot. He'd driven his car here and our bags were in the trunk. We planned to move them into the limo before leaving the reception. His brother was going to drive him back to his apartment after the reception. I smiled knowing that Dad would really like Bobby and slid into the passenger seat. I was instantly excited when he turned on the ignition and the huge 440-cylinder engine rumbled to life. Sure, it wasn't a GM, but the 1969 Challenger was still a beast. "Where are we going?" he asked as we roared out of the parking lot. "Go west on 156. I'll find the address and put it in Waze," I replied, working the phone. It wasn't difficult. After all, he wasn't trying to hide. I knew the town he lived in, and a search of the real estate records gave me the answers I needed. He was about 2 hours away. We could only hope he would be home when we got there. We didn't stop to change clothes. I was on a mission and didn't want to waste time. It's not a common occurrence when you open the front door and see a woman in a wedding dress and a man in a tuxedo on the porch. If you were a priest and lived in a church, it would probably happen sometimes. The problem was that I wasn't a priest and certainly didn't live at the church. What was even more surprising was that I actually knew which one was which. I had no idea who the person was, but it was definitely my oldest daughter standing there. My oldest daughter who had made it clear that she didn't want to see me anymore. I recalled that today was her wedding day, but I couldn't figure out why she was here. She must be either at church, at the reception, or on her way to her honeymoon. Standing on my doorstep was the very last place she should be. "Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute, please?" she asked in a very small voice. Still stunned, I stepped back and let them enter. I gestured toward the living room where Marie and Jenny were sitting. I noticed the shocked looks on their faces. "Oh, Carly, this is my wife Marie and our daughter Jenny." "Jenny Marie, this is Carly. I'm sorry, but I don't know who the guy with her is." "Oh, yes. Dad, this is my fiancé, Bobby Jensen." "Bobby, and this is my dad, Tom Williams, his wife Marie, and my sister Jenny," introduced Carly. "Fiancé? I thought he was already your husband. Didn't you just get married a couple hours ago?" I was confused. "That's what I need to talk to you about. I can't do it today. I can't get married unless Daddy walks me down the aisle." "Daddy, I finally get it. You're right. You've always been right. I'm sorry I got caught up in Mom's bullshit and blamed you. It was Mom who gave up on us, not you who gave up on us. I'm sorry for everything I said and did. You didn't deserve any of it. I won't make excuses for my behavior because there really are no excuses, except that I was young and stupid and listened to the wrong people. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me and let me back into your life. I really, really want to marry Bobby. He's a really great guy and I know you'll like him. But I can't marry him unless you agree to walk me down the aisle and marry me off." It was completely unexpected. I probably should have been focusing on other things, but there seemed to be an elephant or two in the room. Although I was very glad that my daughter had decided that I wasn't the bastard who had abandoned them and wanted me back in her life, the curiosity that prevailed in me at the sight of this scene demanded attention. "So, Carly, did something happen at the wedding? I mean, you're wearing a wedding dress and Bobby's in a tuxedo, so I'm assuming you really were at the wedding." She looked at herself, then at her fiancé. "Oh, yes, we were already halfway through the ceremony when an epiphany came over me. Here," she said, holding out the disc to me. "Maybe you should watch Bobby and I change into our regular clothes." Bobby ran to the car and got the suitcase, and Marie escorted Carly into the bedroom where they could change. While this was going on, I set up a video player connected to the big screen in the living room. As soon as Carly and Bobby were ready, Marie came back and sat down next to me, and I pressed the play button on the remote. It started out like a normal wedding ceremony. The groomsmen escorted the bridesmaids down the aisle and then separated at the altar. Bobby entered with the priest. He carried the ring, then the flower girl. Finally, Clarence walked Carly down the aisle. It was all pretty typical until Carly started saying her vows. But even that was normal up to a certain point. Suddenly, she found it hard to speak. She seemed to be stuck on one word. "She did it. I can't believe she actually did it and that it hit her so hard," whispered Jenny to herself. I was about to ask her what she was talking about when Carly stopped trying to say her vows and changed everything. We watched the video of her stopping the wedding and then confronting her mom. I was shocked by her revelations. Apparently, her cheating has increased since she married Clarence. By the time the video ended, Carly and Bobby had changed clothes and returned to the living room. I just couldn't go through with it. I looked into Bobby's eyes and realized how much it would hurt him if I did to him what Mom did to you. I finally realized what renounced all really meant and that Mom had broken that vow. Then, I realized how much she had dishonored you and that I had dishonored you by marrying you without the place of honor you deserve. How can I say such solemn vows at a ceremony where the place of honor is held by two of the most dishonorable people I know? How can these vows have any real meaning if they don't include the most honorable person I know? I realized that if I really wanted these vows to have meaning, I had to be led down the aisle by my dad, the man who actually taught me values and integrity. I decided that when I married Bobby, it should be you there, not Mom and Clarence. Carly paused for a moment, then smiled and looked at Jenny. "Besides, I need my little sister to be one of my bridesmaids. It was your kick in the ass that woke me up." I remembered what you said to me as I looked into Bobby's eyes trying to say my vows. "How can I get married if you won't stand by my side?" It was very important. We talked for a few more hours. I didn't realize that Jenny had gotten Carly's phone number from my phone right after I went out to the workshop after Carly's call that afternoon. She went to her room and a few minutes later called Carly on her own phone. It was getting late, and I asked them to stay the night in the guest bedroom. Throughout the evening, Carly received several phone calls. She ignored the calls from Clarence and Kayla, but several of her friends called as well. Apparently, several of the guests accepted her offer to have some fun at Clarence's expense. He tried to cancel, but it was too late for a refund. By the time he got to the reception venue, there were already a few dozen people there taking advantage of the open bar. The food was already being prepared too, and all the servers, bartenders, and DJ were already in place and working. Eventually, Clarence gave up, grabbed a drink, and moved to a table in the corner to drown his sorrow. Josh sent her a video taken on his phone when his mom came over to talk to Clarence. It didn't seem to go well. Clarence was yelling a lot. The words cheating horror took up most of the conversation. It looked like that relationship was about to end as well. Josh said he was able to cancel his plane and resort reservations, but had to pay a 20% penalty for not canceling on time. Since Carly and Bobby had already taken time off work for their honeymoon, they stayed with us all week. I reconnected with the daughter I thought I had lost. I also got to know Bobby better. He's a great guy with strong morals. The relationship was a little strained at first, as the only things he had heard about me were lies told to him by my ex-wife, son, and daughter. Well, not really lies, but rather embellishing the truth that painted me as a bad guy who abandoned his family. In addition, there were several important facts left out in these conversations. After the truth started to come out, he started to treat me warmer. It helped when I showed him my store and my latest projects. Although he liked the classic Dodges better, we both appreciated each other's cars. Hey, we're both tech fans. At least he wasn't one of those wimps who drives an automatic. His Challenger had a manual transmission. About midweek, a new wedding date was set. It was to be held at the same venue on the same weekend a year later. This time I would be paying for her and walking her down the aisle. Besides, Marie was going to be called upon to help with the wedding. Yeah, Jenny was going to be a bridesmaid too. Carly and Bobby called everyone in the wedding party and gave them the latest news. Well, everyone except Kayla and Clarence. Over the next few months, Carly and I worked hard to rebuild our relationship. Bobby and I also got to know each other better. We attended several car shows participating in Marie's GTO, my '72 truck, Bobby's Challenger, and even got Jenny to participate in the 1974 Firebird I bought for her. Carly and Bobby would come over and spend a couple days with us a couple times a month. Josh even showed up a few times. It was harder with him because he was always closer to his mother than he was to me. But we rebuilt some of our relationship. I think he did it more for Carly's sake than mine, but I agree. Besides, he always had some news from home. By the way, things were not going well between Kayla and Clarence. Clarence had moved out and filed for divorce. The good news for Kayla was that Clarence had filed for divorce because of irreconcilable differences, not adultery. This meant that the harsh penalties of the prenuptial agreement would not apply. He filed in such a way as to end it quickly and without a fight. The good news for Clarence was that he had a prenup. The prenuptial agreement stated that all property he owned before he got married was not subject to division. Kayla would get half of the property acquired during the marriage. But even that would not be enough when you consider the property acquired before the marriage. She would mostly get the house and about $50,000. As for the house, Clarence did try to get a piece of it, but he had no proof that he was entitled to it. Sure, it was his money that was used to buy out my share after the divorce, but there was no real proof of that. Apparently, he took out a business loan for his company to get the money, but never documented exactly what he spent it on. In addition, they never put his name on the certificate of title for the house. Since the house had belonged to Kayla before they were married, she refused to even discuss the topic. Clarence ended up paying off the loan, but accomplished nothing. By the time he realized that the money for the house would not be returned to him, it was too late to file an adultery complaint. Rumors of Kayla's adventure spread, and her credibility in the community suffered greatly. Friends began to avoid her, and invitations to parties, charity events, and other occasions dried up. Worse, because she didn't work and relied on Clarence's money, her financial situation deteriorated badly. Clarence learned an expensive lesson. He lost a couple $100,000 buying out my half of the house, another $28,000 for the wedding that went south. He also had to pay Kayla $50,000 in the divorce. And then there was the humiliation. Kayla was furious that her adventures had been made public, and that Clarence was divorcing her the way he did. She started telling her remaining friends that she cheated on him because he has such a small penis and doesn't even know how to use it properly. She also told all her girlfriends that he refused to lick her, even though he demanded that she suck him off. This kind of gossip spreads like wildfire. It wasn't long before all the women he tried to pick up at the bar just laughed at him. He became a recluse, only going to work and straight home. His social life evaporated. "Ready, Daddy?" my oldest daughter asked. "No father is willing to let his daughters go, but I'm honored to do it for you," I replied. The doors opened and music filled the church. I stepped in, starting with my left foot, and proudly began to lead my daughter down the aisle. I cast a quick glance and my smile grew even wider. My ex-wife was sitting in the fourth row. My wife Marie was taking her place of honor in the front row. I would join her after taking care of one last important honor for my daughter. Who gives this woman in marriage? As a father, I give her as my wife. I said loudly, "Love you, baby," I whispered, kissing her on the cheek and handing her to Bobby. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention my wife. No, this wasn't my idea. Carly had asked me to do it that way. I turned and walked over and sat down next to my wife. To have and to hold. In sickness and in health. In good times and bad. Leaving everyone else behind. Carly practically shouted the last phrase. Then with a bright smile, she finished her vow. It was a beautiful ceremony. When they kissed at the end, there was a round of applause. I looked down from the head table. Marie was next to me. I saw Kayla sitting at a table off to the side. She didn't look happy. Every time she looked up and saw Marie sitting in her seat, she frowned. I noticed that she took advantage of the open bar. Clarence hadn't been invited. I don't know if he would have come even if he had been invited. My last great accomplishment for my daughter was complete. I walked her down the aisle, married her, made a beautiful toast. To the newly married couple, danced a father-daughter, danced with my daughter, and then danced with my wife. While my daughter, her husband, and his parents danced to the second song. My duties were done. I sat at the table next to my wife. My youngest daughter was dancing with one of the crowd of guys, claiming her attention. Part of me, Marie, won't you? May I ask your husband to this dance? Heard a familiar voice behind me asking for my wife. Marie and I turned to face my ex-wife. Marie stared at her for a while before answering. Just be sure to return it to where you found it. She looked at me. I trust you, but I don't trust her not to do anything stupid. I led Kayla to the floor. A slow song started playing. I wouldn't be surprised if she had asked for it. For that very purpose. I tried to keep my distance and not pull her to me. We danced for a bit before she spoke. You were supposed to give me that one night. We were supposed to forget about it and go on with our lives as normal. Tonight was supposed to be just the two of us. And you shouldn't have left that night. You should have known better than to think I wouldn't mind you cheating on me, no matter how many times you did it. I didn't cheat. I told you about it before I did it. I didn't sneak around behind your back. Whether you told me or not is immaterial. The fact that you had sex with someone else is cheating. Besides, I didn't give you permission. I told you not to do it, but you did it anyway. I never wanted this. I only wanted one night, and then we could be together forever. You know you're the only man I've ever loved. I've never had the slightest love for him. Besides, the sex wasn't that great. He was selfish and not even as big as you. Then why did you marry him? Because you divorced me. Of course I didn't love him, but I liked him. After you left, I didn't want to be alone. I thought I could love him, but I could never get over you. I did all those nasty things to you because I was angry that you left me. I still loved you, but you wouldn't even talk to me. After that one night, I realized that you were all I needed, and I would never date another man again. So why did you cheat on him? Because he was a failure in bed. I thought I could train him, but he refused to listen to advice. He refused to go down on me, and I stopped giving him blowjobs. He would just stick it in, pump for a few minutes, erupt, and then roll over and fall asleep. When I couldn't take it anymore, I found a couple other guys who could actually bring me to orgasm. I had no idea Carly knew anything about it. Even if I had known she knew about all of this, I never would have thought she would leave me to my own devices like that. I feel really sorry for you. We had a really great marriage, but you abandoned it for one night of mediocre sex. I don't think there's any chance. I couldn't keep from laughing. Not just no, but very no. First of all, even if I wasn't married now. What you did by setting my children on me destroyed any possibility of us ever getting back together again. I am now remarried to the woman I love, and I have another daughter that I love as well. The best I can offer is the courtesy of being in the same place and at any events with our children and grandchildren. Thankfully, the song soon ended. I never spoke to her again that evening. She couldn't afford to pay the mortgage on the house, so she eventually sold it and moved into a small apartment. The money from the sale of the house was enough for her to live on, if she was careful. She occasionally went on dates with her girlfriends, but as far as I know, she never had any other relationships. Clarence ended up living alone too. Carly and Bobby had a long, loving marriage. They had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. Josh eventually married a nice girl as well. 2 daughters were born to them. As far as I know, neither of them cheated on each other. There are those who think I should have gotten revenge on Kayla and Clarence. The reality is that I couldn't hurt them in any way without going to jail or getting retaliated against. I decided to just move forward and live my life as best I could. As they say, the best revenge is a life well lived. That's what I did and let karma deal with the rest. Karma is a bitch and her stripper name is Revenge. Clarence and Kayla didn't burn, but they didn't walk away unscathed. No, I had nothing to do with it, but I still feel good. I have my wife, daughter, and 2 other children back in my life. I am surrounded by people who love me. I have a good life. Ready, Daddy? My daughter asked. No father is willing to let his daughters go, but I'm honored to do it for you, I replied. The doors opened and music filled the church. I stepped in, starting with my left foot, and proudly began to lead my daughter down the aisle. My wife took her place of honor in the front row and smiled broadly. I joined her after taking care of one last important honor for my daughter. Don't worry, Dad. I'm going to do it today. I talked to Carly, and I'm going to do it right the first time, Jenny assured me. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.